A man had recently purchased a new car and was quite protective of it. His wife requested to borrow it for a quick trip to the nearby grocery store. Initially hesitant, he eventually agreed. As she was about to leave, he jokingly called out, "Just remember, if you have an accident, the newspaper will print your age." An elderly woman from a small town in Texas heard a knock on her front door. Upon opening it, she found a neatly dressed man with a vacuum cleaner. "Hello, ma'am," he greeted. "Can I show you the newest vacuum model from California?" "It's the best there is." The old woman frowned and said, "No thanks, I don't have extra money for fancy things." She attempted to shut the door, but the man was quick. He put his foot in the door to stop her. "Wait, let me just show you how it works," he insisted. Before she could respond, he poured a whole bucket of messy horse poop onto her clean carpet. "If my vacuum doesn't clean up every bit of this mess," he promised confidently, "I'll eat whatever is left over." The old woman smiled slightly and said, "You better be hungry. Wait here while I go get a spoon." The man looked puzzled and asked, "Why a spoon?" She chuckled and replied, "Because they cut off my electricity this morning." A young man encountered a stunning woman and struck a deal to spend an evening with her for $500. Eagerly, they proceeded with their plan. As dawn approached, he confessed he didn't have the cash on hand. Instead, he assured her he'd have his assistant mail her a check, marking it as rent for an apartment. Driving to his office the next day, the young man mulled over the previous night. He concluded that perhaps the experience didn't quite match the hefty price tag he'd agreed upon. So, making a shrewd move, he instructed his assistant to send a check for just $250, accompanied by a note explaining the discrepancy. The note read, "Dear lady, I'm sending a check for $250 for the apartment rent. I must admit I had certain expectations when I agreed to the full amount. 1. It had never been occupied. 2. There was plenty of heat. And 3. It was small enough to make me cozy and feel at home. However, my stay revealed the contrary. Clearly, it wasn't unoccupied before, lacked the warmth I was seeking, and felt too vast." The woman, not one to be outwitted, wittily shot back with the $250 check and her own sassy note. "Dear gentleman, I'm puzzled at how you'd assume such a lovely apartment would remain vacant for long. As for warmth, it's all about knowing the right buttons to push. And about the size, the apartment is quite standard. If you found it too expansive, maybe it's time to reevaluate your own furnishings rather than pointing fingers at the landlord." A young nun employed by a local home healthcare agency found herself stranded with an empty gas tank during her rounds. Fortunately, a gas station was conveniently located just a block away. She walked to the station in hopes of borrowing a gas canister. The attendant, with regret, informed her that the only gas canister he had was currently on loan. However, he assured her that it would be back shortly if she could wait. Considering her commitment to visit a patient, the nun chose not to wait and returned to her car. Resourcefully searching through her vehicle, she spotted a bedpan intended for the patient. Undeterred, she carried the bedpan to the gas station, filled it with gasoline, and then transported it back to her car. While pouring the gas into her car's tank, 2 men observed her from across the street. One of them turned to the other and humorously remarked, "I know that the Lord turned water into wine, but if that car starts, I'm going to church every Sunday for the rest of my life." An Irishman, a Mexican, and a blonde guy, all construction workers, were having lunch on top of a building. The Irishman, upon opening his lunch pail and finding cabbage and beef, exclaimed, "If I get one more beef and cabbage for lunch, I'm going to jump off this building." The Mexican, finding a taco in his lunch, chimed in, "If I get one more taco for lunch, I'm going to jump off this building too." The blonde man, discovering a peanut butter sandwich, joined in, saying, "If I get one more peanut butter sandwich, I'm going to jump off this building." The next day, the Irishman, disappointed to find cabbage and beef again, fulfilled his threat and jumped off the building. The Mexican, encountering another taco, followed suit. Lastly, The blonde guy, faced with another peanut butter sandwich, also jumped off. At their funeral, the Irishman's wife lamented, "If only I knew he didn't like cabbage and beef, I would have packed something else." The Mexican's wife echoed, "If only I knew he didn't like tacos, I would have packed something different." The blonde man's wife, however, remarked, "I don't know what his problem was. He packed his own lunch." A psychiatrist was leading a group therapy session for the first time, consisting of 3 young mothers and their small children. The objective was to identify and address their problems collectively. As the session commenced, the psychiatrist stood up, facing the group, and shared insights. "Everyone has their unique problems and obsessions," he began. "Though these problems vary, we often unknowingly provide subtle hints as a cry for help. Let me go around the room and attempt to guess your problems." Addressing the group, he remarked, "From looking at the roster today, it seems that you all have obsessions." To the first mother, he stated, "Your obsession appears to be eating. You even went so far as to name your daughter Candy." Turning to the second mother, he continued, "Your focus seems to be on money, evident in your child's name, Penny." At this juncture, the third mother appeared uneasy, glancing around. Quickly, she stood up, took her little boy by the hand, and whispered, "Come on, Peter, it's time to go." A man was thrilled about his new voice-automated robot car, which had been flawlessly executing commands and making him the talk of the town. One exhausting afternoon, as his wife rested on the couch, she asked if he could use the robot car to pick up their kids from school. Eager to showcase the car's efficiency, the man confidently commanded, "Car, go get our children from school." However, as the hours passed with no sign of the car, concern grew, and the wife, fretting, wondered why it was taking so long. Trying to stay calm, the man suggested, "Maybe there's traffic. They'll be back soon." Yet, as more time passed, his worry deepened. Preparing for the worst, he decided to head to the police station to report a missing car. Just as they were putting on their jackets, the sound of a car approached. Looking out, they saw the robot car coming down the road, packed with kids. It pulled into the driveway, and the voice system activated, saying, "Mission accomplished! I have brought your children, sir." Confused, the man observed the 2 daughters of their landlady, the 2 sons of their choir mistress, the daughter of his wife's best friend, the young boy from their church, and 2 boys from next door. Before he could say anything, his wife exclaimed, "Are all these kids really yours?" The baffled man retorted, "Can you first tell me why our children are not in the car?" A captured wild rabbit is brought to a medical laboratory for experiments, where it befriends a rabbit born and raised in the lab. One day, the wild rabbit notices that the researchers haven't properly latched his cage and decides it's the perfect opportunity to escape. He shares tales of the wonders outside with the lab rabbit, convincing him to join the adventure. Their first stop is a field of lettuce where they munch happily. The wild rabbit promises an even better field and leads the lab rabbit to a carrot-filled paradise. As they enjoy the carrots for hours, the wild rabbit suggests the best field of all, a field full of female rabbits. The rabbits enter the field and engage in typical rabbit activities. At dawn, exhausted and content, the lab rabbit surprises the wild rabbit by announcing, "Well, I'm heading back to the lab." Stunned, the wild rabbit questions, "Why? I showed you a field of lettuce, a field of carrots, and a field full of female rabbits." The lab rabbit responds, "Yeah, that was really great, but now I'm dying for a cigarette, hun." Jessica had been eyeing a brand new set of furniture for their living space for quite some time, but her husband was not on board with the idea. Every single day she would approach him with the same request, hoping he would finally agree to update their living room with the new set. However, without fail, his response was always a refusal. Eventually, he grew somewhat tired of the continuous back and forth and concocted a plan to put an end to it once and for all. One day, as Jessica repeated her usual plea, her husband turned to her and proposed, "You can indeed get that brand new living room set you've wanted for so long, but it comes with a single non-negotiable condition. Feeling a surge of excitement and believing she might finally get her wish, Jessica eagerly responded, "I'll do anything you want, just name it." Her husband, maintaining his serious expression, laid out his stipulation, saying, "When the day comes that you have grown hair on your chest, that's the day I'll agree, and will purchase your desired living room set." Jessica was dumbfounded and disheartened by this odd and seemingly impossible requirement. "But how could I possibly grow hair there?" she wondered aloud. Her enthusiasm faded into confusion and disappointment. The husband, feeling triumphant in his clever diversion, simply flashed a grin, offered no solution, and went about his day, heading off to his workplace. However, that evening when he returned home, a surprise awaited him. Jessica greeted him with her eyes sparkling with triumph and a smile stretched across her face, reminiscent of their joyous early days together. She announced with glee, "Guess what? I went ahead and placed the order for my living room set this afternoon." Perplexed, the husband couldn't help but ask, "Really? Did you somehow manage to grow hair on your chest?" Pressing further for authenticity, he insisted, "I'm talking about genuine hair growth, not using any sort of artificial means or attachment." With confidence, Jessica declared, "Yes, I absolutely have." Skeptical, the husband demanded evidence, saying, "I need to see this for myself." Complying with his request, Jessica then proceeded to lift her skirt boldly, stating, "Here it is," as she gestured toward her private region.